I've heard a lot of men talk about what it was like growing up without a father, and they had to learn what it meant to be a man, right?
Right.
And like, I never actually thought about that because I had a positive male figure in my life, even though my dad had his own dysfunctional behavioral patterns. He drank a lot and did things like that. He was very disciplined, focused, successful. He went from being home. His parents died when he was young, and he ended up becoming a surgeon and building a nice practice for himself. So by any standard, he was successful in doing things. And I got to grow up with a father who was constantly advancing his life in business and his career and taking care of his family to the best of his ability. He also was very supportive, went to every soccer game, was doing all this stuff, but he had a drinking problem. There's no doubt about that. Okay. It is hard for me to put myself in a place with someone who grew up in a broken home, or even more so, had a father who was actively trying to destroy their son or daughter's life. It is so difficult for me to relate to that this is why some of these conversations are so important to me, because I'm learning from you, and I know you're learning from me, and this is feedback. But I was kind of touching on what it means to be a man, and I feel that it's about pursuing your purpose, being a rock, emotionally and mentally stable for a loved one. They need to be able to count on you, because the feminine energy is more fluctuating. From my experience, what I've seen is more, I would say, is less emotionally stable. And what it means to be a man is to be the one who's disciplined and the constant that the woman can always rely on and count on, right? And
Right.
so that's kind of my version of what it means to be a man, is to be pursuing your purpose, to really treat your body as your temple, and to be the emotional rock for your loved one and families to the best of your ability. You really can't do anything more than that, right? That's the stuff that's within your control.
Right.
Do you want to go into anything about how your concept of what a man was, because you didn't have any versions of, you didn't have a good role model. Your version of what a man was so distorted from the experiences you had as a child. How did you eventually learn what a man truly was, and how they're supposed to behave? Go into that, anything.
That didn't happen until I started my healing process. You know, and then it was then that I began to realize that what I've been looking for in a partner, we need emotional support.
Stability, yeah.
Stability, because we didn't have that as a child. We look for guidance, and the guidance doesn't have to be something, big, just little day-to-day things, that a father does to their daughter. They give them guidance, and they give them love, and they give them protection, and they give them emotional stability. And we look for all these things in a partner. But I didn't learn about all these things until I was well into my healing process, and information started clicking in, as I was healing. Stuff that I'd heard over the years was suddenly coming back. When you're healing, you're coming up out of a fog, okay? And little tidbits of things that are pertinent to you start coming back, because they're buried in between all those layers.
I think this is a good topic, of how you eventually began to learn what a true man was, because you said at first you wanted validation, and you were using your body as a way to get validation, and that became part of your self-identity.
Correct.
At what point did you start to say, like, hey, this person right here, I need to stay away from. This person is a decent individual. I think I wouldn't mind getting to know more. When were you able to discern the difference between that which was toxic and dysfunctional and that which was healthy and functional? Go ahead.
I think after about 10 years of off and on healing, because It takes time to get to that point. Your brain's got to process it at its own speed. You can't rush it, you can't force it. So I think after about 10 years of healing, that I started to see how dysfunctional my own marriage was, and how much of the things that I was wanting out of my marriage I was not getting, and that's when that proverbial light bulb came on, and I realized I'm in the wrong kind of relationship. I was really wanting my husband to change. But as we know, we cannot change another person. They have to be wanting to change themselves, and it was just off and on after that, a struggle within my marriage, because the more I healed, the more I saw how dysfunctional my marriage was. And the more I saw how much I needed that he wasn't giving me. And I tried to explain these things to him, and he just looked at me with a big question mark.
That's kind of now where we're going into a next level of is like being able to determine whether the individual you're talking to or with is capable of change, because sometimes they're unaware, they don't want to, they don't care, and then they can do that. Other times it's just that pattern that's it. It's put in place, set in motion. It's been too long. Go ahead.
Having to change means you're having to own up your past deeds, and I saw with my husband that he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to own up to anything that he did or anything that he had been doing to me. He just did not want to own up to it. He did not want to work on that part of himself. So he stayed the way he was. He told me when we got married, I'm not going to change for anybody. He meant it. He really meant it. He did not. The problem is his friends and his family, he treated stellar, and with me, no, 26 years of.
Is that just behind the scenes or out in public too? Were you only behind the scenes? In public, he treated you very nice. Nobody would know, right?
Nobody knew. Nobody, because I never said anything, and that's because of childhood, be seen and not heard.
So you're walking around in public, arm candy, holding each other, smiling, and then behind the doors, it's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. That
exactly.
Different story.
Behind the doors, it was a different story. He was a tyrant, like my father. And like I said, because of my mental health for many years, I could not do anything about it. Nothing, And it's funny because when I was going through my second round of my healing process, I came back from the counselor and he said, I don't like your counselor. I don't like what she's teaching you. I don't want you to go back and see her. And it's like, excuse me, no, and it wasn't until he had got diagnosed with cancer that he apologized and said that the counselor that I had been seeing, was doing good for me, that I was growing from it. But it took cancer to get him to change.
Let me ask you this. So, because I kind of want to go through the process where you're beginning to become aware that your marriage is dysfunctional. Were you ever around other couples who were married that were actually a healthy, loving connection where you could see how they acted in public and behind the scenes, where you could like go to a friend's house and see the husband helping with the dishes and hey, love, and give her a kiss on the cheek, and them like actually laughing and joking and doing things like that? Were you ever able to see that and go, go ahead?
I did. And it was through people at the church that I got to see what a healthy relationship looked like, that the persona they portrayed out in public was the same way they portrayed at home. It didn't change. And the first time I saw that, I was, in shock, to say the least. because everything I had learned and watched growing up just got blown out the water. Because coming from the Mexican barrio, there's, as kids, what you're taught is you see this here in reference to the barrio. This is where you're going to live. This is where you're going to die. All that you see out there, all the happiness, all the people get along with each other, families get along. You'll never have that. So all the pain and the heartache and all that is all you see in regards to relationships. And when I first saw a real, honest to God, healthy relationship, it's like all the information I had received over the years got blown out the water. It was, bullshit. I was being fed bullshit, saying, you can't have this. You will never have this. Give up.
You didn't even know that it was something that was real. You were unaware that relationship dynamic even existed in society. So when you're hanging out with your church couples at church, they invite you back to the house or the get together, come on over, and they're acting just as joyful, and they sit down and they're hugging each other. Are you still in your mind going like, oh, they're still putting on an act because we're here? Or how many times did it take before you got going like, no, this is actually how they are. They actually love each other. This is what love and a high quality connection actually looks like. And then go ahead.
It took a couple of days to process what I was seeing. Okay. And to understand, because like you said, I had that bouncing back and forth. Is this real? Is it not? Is it real? Is it not? And my brain had to process everything that I was seeing before I came to the notion that this is actually real. And then it was the big aha moment, and I was angry because of everything that was taught to me as a child, at home, out on the streets with all the other people, and was being taught all the wrong things, because what was being taught in the neighborhood was that this is your life, except that the way things are run, this is the way your life's going to be. You're never going to have anything nice. You're never going to have anything solid. You're never going to have anything true. Nobody in our life gets that. Resign your life to it and accept it, because this is your life.
It's more of a submit with no pathway to empowerment, right? It's just submitting.
Yeah.
It's different than accepting like, hey, I've done bad things in my life. I went to jail, and now my life is going to have challenges. I accept that. I take responsibility for that. We're not talking about that kind of acceptance. No. We're talking about submit to the despair and the hopelessness, right, of your future.
So these things are taught to us as kids, and how
well, when you say taught to us, you're talking about people who are abused as a child or who are traumatized as children, and that, because not everybody's taught that. I mean, you're talking about a specific destructive pattern, parenting style, or remember the generational trauma is passed down. That might have been how your father was even brought up, and your mother in the same way. So it's just this pathway, and right in how we're talking about this generational pattern of trauma.
Yeah, because where I lived, it was all a Hispanic culture, okay, and those bad generational things that are passed down to each generation. It doesn't have to be your family teaching you these things. It's your neighbors,
It's reinforced, yeah.
Yeah, it's reinforced. You go to your neighbor's house because you're going to go play with their kids, and the same things are being taught in that family. And then you go to a different house, and the same things are being taught in that family. So it's generational within Hispanic family, and it gets you get taught to give in to the despair and don't dream. Don't dream.
You're making me think about a bunch of stuff, because as a man who's tried to connect with women several times over the years and form like a meaningful connection with them, right? I have I have been in situations where I'm trying to talk and connect and communicate with them and get some kind of reciprocity. And I'm like wondering why I can't get a reciprocity or what's going on. And they'll come around kind of later and maybe a year later or something. They'll be like, Kyle, I thought you were joking. Like, I don't understand. I didn't understand this. I'm not used to this. Remember you were talking about, I'm not used to this. I'm not used to someone being open and honest and like being very direct and then also like expressing themselves clearly and kind of and asking for that in return, and it would scare them off. And
Yeah,
go.
yes, quite often, you've got women like myself.
Go ahead,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm in a since we're talking about relationships, I'm actually in a healthy relationship, and I told him I am not used to someone like you. You say what you mean and you mean what you say, and I'm not used to that. I'm used to men saying that, and then it's the exact opposite, not but moments later. So I told him, it's like, as the days started moving on, his say what you mean what you say stayed. It didn't go away like in previous relationships, and I told him, I'm not used to you. You're going to have to give me time to get used to you, because the way you are, you're what I dreamed about. Okay. The positives that I was looking for, the emotional stability, being upfront, say what you mean what you say, be uplifting. He uplifts me daily, and at first I thought, wait, what is this? You're uplifting me. Well, I had dreamed about things like that, but when I dreamed about these things, what I failed to do was run that tape fast forward.
Oh.
What would happen if I actually got that in a person? How am I going to react? What am I going to do? And well, I reacted with, I can't handle you. I don't know. I don't know how to handle you. Please give me time.
This is too much. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming and it scares me. And I don't necessarily believe you. I don't trust you. And then all of a sudden the fear, the trauma response comes up, correct?
It is. And I was scared because I thought the whole time for the first couple of weeks, because we're now going into 7 months, almost 8. But I would say like the first month, it was like, okay, when is the sky going to fall, Chicken Little? When is the shoe going to drop?
I'm just waiting. I don't want to keep getting a little close. I know it's coming. I know it's coming. This is just one more letdown. I know it.
Yes, it is. And it was like that. It actually took about 3 months before it quieted down. So it took like 3 months before I finally realized the shoe's not going to drop. The sky isn't going to fall, Chicken Little. And we've had a lot of long, hard talks, about my experiences in life and relationships. And he has reiterated back of what he doesn't do. And he's not just a man of words, he's a man of action.
Right.
Okay. And he knew that with me, it was going to take action, not words, to convince me that he's not the past. So he's been very patient in that and allowing me to be able to separate all that and push my past aside and start afresh with right here, right now with him, and accept him as, and realize he is not them. He's not my past. The worst thing you can do in a relationship is compare your current relation to someone from your past. And that's the worst thing that you can do. Well, I had to shove the past aside so I could learn more about him, see him for who he is, accept him for who he is, and see that the actions that he's doing are true. And now that it's 7 months down the road, I don't have that problem anymore because, like I said, he's a man of action, and he knew that it was going to take action to see and prove to me that he wasn't like the past.